Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
No, you said that that's not allowed. Singing is not allowed. What are you doing?
Wait. Okay. This song has gotten stuck in my head so much now. And it drives you crazy. And I don't
No,
even
it's in my head. How am I going to do the podcast with this going around in my head?
I don't know. But here's the thing. We taught LCMC class today, our Life Consulting Master class.
Uh-huh.
And anytime we have the tech hosts bringing up the graphics that we're teaching from or the videos we're teaching from, that song pops in my head. So I just like dance and sing that song. And then it's stuck in my head for a whole week. And then you don't love it because then it comes out of my mouth like every few minutes.
Yes. Yeah, but why are you doing it now?
I just thought I could start the podcast. This is fun. This is what my brain feels like right now. I have a migraine. I've never recorded a video podcast while having a migraine. I feel a little nervous. I almost started crying just saying this.
Oh.
But there's something to be said about when we used to do podcasts when I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
My face can just look like this. But nobody sees it.
Yeah, it's true.
So this is the first time that you guys are going to see what I look like. I'll have that deadpan face while you talk several times.
What migraine Abby looks like?
Yeah, it kind of looks like I want to kill people. I have to start, whenever I start LCMC class, if I have a migraine, I'm like, hey, just letting you guys know I have a migraine.
Got a migraine,
so
yeah.
in case I look like I think your answer is so stupid, it's actually that nothing's going on here and I'm just trying to remember a thought.
That's real. That's real.
Yep. But you don't like my intro start to this episode?
I mean, now the song's stuck in my head. So today on the Connected Life podcast, we're going to talk about reconnecting to your intuition.
I love it. That's why I chose it. Oh wait, I should also say this. I drank a bunch of tea, which has caffeine, and took ibuprofen.
Hence your shaking leg.
Oh, and I'm going to be a little bit high acting, but this is just normal.
Yeah.
It just happens sometimes.
Normal, Abby. Caffeine.
That reminds me, I need to pack migraine medicine later. Go ahead.
Hey, good story. So we're going to talk about reconnecting to your intuition today, which something that happens for a lot of us is we end up divorcing ourselves from our personal intuitive self. And there's a lot of reasons for why that happens.
Yeah.
Starting with a breakdown in trust. And we're going to get into a conversation about how we end up breaking trust with ourselves and how we have to rebuild trust in order to really connect back into your intuition.
Yeah. I think living connected to your intuition is fun and scary. You know, if you're just completely dissociated from yourself and tuned out, I think that there's a level of freedom there, but there's also major clues that you miss.
Yeah.
But when you're connected to your intuition, sometimes then you feel like it's easy to shame yourself if you missed something. And that's why I think it feels scary to people. Obviously, I don't think we're supposed to shame ourselves if our intuition misses something. I feel very settled that I can know I can be tuned into a lot of things and have really good intuition and have complete blind spots. I can have both. And I think when I was growing up, I believed if I was going to be good at my intuition, then that meant I had to be good every single time. Like it was all or nothing. I'm either great at having an intuition or I shouldn't trust myself at all.
Yeah.
And that black and white thinking trapped me. I was terrified to make a mistake. I was terrified to miss a clue or a sign or some kind of gut feeling because I was like, if I miss this, that means all of my intuition is bad. If I miss this one, it means every other intuition I have, I can't trust that either. And that becomes really high stakes. And then you become like hypervigilant, kind of OCD about trying to figure it out.
Yeah. I noticed growing up, I would say especially in my 20s, I became very dependent on other people's opinions. And it was a really big sign that I didn't trust my intuition.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people out there that can identify with that, where it's just like, what do you say about this? And what do you think I should do? And what do you think I should do?
Yeah.
And I'm going, it's one thing to invite wisdom into our life. Like, oh, I'm inviting some feedback into my journey from trusted people. But there's a lot of people that hang all of their major life decisions and even their small decisions on the opinions of others. And what that ends up happening inside of that is that you end up feeling very enslaved to the ways that other people choose to live life, to other people's dreams and desires, to other people's fears and insecurities, and other people's judgments. So there's an experience inside of that ends up causing you to be a shell of who you're actually made to be. And again, it all points back to, oh, I don't trust something inside of myself. And I will add this too. I remember in my early 20s, especially when it came to making life decisions, I made all of life super high stakes.
Oh, absolutely.
So when we don't have a connection to grace or an understanding of grace or a revelation of grace, we will end up taking all of our life circumstances and believe that there's not a way for our decisions to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
So it's
like this one path has to be the right path because there's no other options if I miss it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, I mean, that even came down to things like, I mean, I understand the intensity when we choose marriage, because our hope is that
if we put enough pressure on who we choose, there'll be less pain.
Yeah, less pain. And we're also hoping that this is going to be a long-term institutional relationship. Like there's a commitment and a covenant, and I really don't want to break this thing. Totally. But if I pick the wrong person, then I'm trapped, or I don't want to have to go through the divorce. And you can go through all the steps and check all the logic boxes, and a marriage still falls apart.
Absolutely.
Like there's no guarantee that if you get all the right answers from people of what you should do, that's going to work out, just as much as there's no guarantee that if I follow an intuitive feeling inside of myself that it's going to work out.
Well, and this is the thing. We want to guarantee the choices that we make will work out.
Yes.
We're avoiding failure, disappointment, pain. And so there's a part of us that wants certainty. So that's why intuition can feel scary for people, because you either trust it entirely and you are certain of it, and then something eventually happens that shakes that trust.
Yeah.
Like maybe you're like, no, I know this guy is the one. And then you get married and he cheats on you and then divorces you. And so then you're like, what do I do with my intuition now? Or you completely throw intuition out entirely and you just try to make only logical or analytical decisions. And what I found is, so we are all trying to look at, how do I protect myself from future pain?
Yes. And
the way that I've learned that I can protect myself the most is to learn tolerance to face pain and move through it well. Instead of trying to avoid a circumstance that will cause me pain. Like I've started being like, you know what? Even if I follow my intuition well, I might, like, another one is picking friends. When you've had betrayal before.
Yeah, that's a good one.
With friendships.
Yeah, I've had that.
You're trying to figure out, like, are you a safe person to be friends with? Are you a safe person to let in close to my world? And so we're trying to figure out, are you safe or not for me to do this? And in the past, I literally believed if I follow my intuition and the rules of what I've learned, my analytical rules enough, then I should be able to find somebody that won't hurt me. And I tried that for years. And then I still got hurt. And what I've learned, probably half the time because I was in self-fulfilling prophecies.
Right.
But one of the things I learned is that for me, the safest way is to acknowledge I'm going to have hurt from friends for the rest of my life. Like acceptance. So a lot of our suffering comes from resistance.
Pain.
And so if we can accept that life is going to have, whether you follow your intuition perfect or not, life is going to have ups and downs. So my thought was, so now what I've done is I've accepted people are going to hurt me. I'm going to have friends who hurt me. And so my goal is to learn how to love and be loved and do conflict and process through my pain and grief so that I can handle when pain happens. It's much more about, what do I have power over how to move. Like I have power to learn how to stay connected to love when I have pain. I have power. Like right now I have relationships where I'm like, oh, if this friendship hurts me, I have some other friends that can help ground me in feeling safe. And so that my ability to figure out how to move through, how to grieve out the tears of loss, how to let go of what once was, like my ability to work through emotions is much more important than my ability to pick perfectly, and my acceptance of it. Like acceptance decreases the pain in a situation.
Yeah.
So what happens is, and this happened to me so many times, we just went through something this last year where our intuition told us to make a decision.
We've both felt so strong on it.
So strongly. And then it blew up in our face.
Right.
And here's the interesting thing. Does that mean our intuition was wrong?
And that is a great question. And that was something I was going to bring up.
Okay, go ahead. I was going to say, go ahead, girl.
Go ahead, girl. Well, here's the thing. We create expectations of what our intuition should yield us. So if I follow this thing that says, I know I need to do this, we assign meaning to what it's going to look like and how it's going to unfold.
Oh, I feel like this is the right path. So it must mean we're going to have favor, or it must mean that
this opportunity will unfold, or these connections, or, you know, it'll yield this. This is what the yield will be. And then when less than favorable things are yielded out of it, or hard things, difficulties and stuff like that, we'll go inward and we'll start beating up on ourselves. And I was wrong. That wasn't my intuition. I just must have made that up. And it's like, that's because you believe
that intuition should save you from pain.
Exactly. It should lead you down a road of perfect experiences that give you the best bit of goodness in life.
Yeah. And you believe to trust yourself means the choices you make don't lead to pain.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's impossible. Yes. Like, how could we ever know that? I know that we processed. So we allowed, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say also, we're not looking again at the long-term effects, because you might have a momentary lapse in goodness in following your intuition because something messy happens, but you're not looking at the longevity of life. You can get 30 years down the road and go like, that was still one of the best decisions I ever made. I had a whole season of pain, but it provoked this. And now looking back in retrospect, it actually unfolded into the biggest blessing ever.
I know that I have several examples in my own life. Do you have examples of yours where you followed intuition? Like I was thinking about this with even marriage. So I had a strong intuition I should marry you. And we got married.
I did too. And that turned out very painful for both of us.
Yeah. And I don't know that was wrong. Like sometimes I don't know that it was right or wrong. I think I've held it in the mystery box. No, I'm saying
you don't know if it was right.
I'm really thankful. Wait, that's not how I meant it. I'm really thankful that we're married.
Yeah.
But like, was it the right decision for my life or not? I don't know. It was the choice I could make then.
Yes.
And when I look back, I'm like, half of my intuition was clouded by my triggers. You know? Like I think for both of us, part of why you felt like home was from my family dysfunctions. And part of why I felt like home was because I matched some of your dysfunctions.
Yeah.
Does that feel true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so,
and I think that that's universal for people.
Yeah. Some of our intuition was our triggers.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable at having lots of compassion and grace and not beating myself up for that being a part of how I listen to my intuition.
Yeah, especially.
It just feels like a part of the human process.
Yeah. And especially when you can approach decision making in a way where you're like, I'm following what I believe to be my intuition right now, and I'm going to extract the beauty out of it.
Yeah.
Regardless of how it unfolds. Because in the midst of the areas that we have perpetuated pain for each other, we've also created
brought so much healing
and so much beauty,
so much safety, so much love, so much connection.
And when you're not in black and white thinking, you can do that. when you are in black and white thinking, you have to decide this was a bad decision or this was a good decision.
Yes.
Instead of this was a human decision.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that most of us are looking at life through that black and white lens. This, like this job was the right choice or the wrong choice.
Right.
Instead of this job has things that bring me alive in a lot of ways. And this job has things that challenge me in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that is actually what jobs are. But somewhere
and
we
that's
think
what friendships are.
That's
and
what friendships
are.
and marriages and churches. Like, I had an intuition to go to this church, but now it's messy here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you missed it or not. Like, that's one of the things I don't try to label if I missed it or not. We talked when I was younger or earlier in the podcast about how there was a guy I thought I was supposed to marry. And my intuition felt very strong towards that. And then when it didn't work out, it really knocked the wind out of me about following my intuition.
I mean, I had the same thing.
Back then I was black or white.
Yeah.
I'm either right or wrong about intuition.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I don't know what to trust. If I followed this and it led to this pain, then what can I actually trust? Can I trust my insight on things? And it took me a couple years of wrestling through that. And I think that's true for anyone. When they trust some, when they trust someone and they get betrayed.
Yes.
In a deep level, or they choose anytime we choose vulnerability, we choose to be vulnerable in a church and then we get hurt. We choose to date someone and open up our heart and then we get broken up with. We think that somebody is going to be loyal and then they betray us behind our backs. Any of those things can really knock the wind out of us.
Yep.
Did you want to say anything?
No, I just agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn how to process it. For me, I've held onto the mystery box.
Yeah.
Of like with the guy that I didn't marry. I still hold the mystery, like, could he have chosen to marry me? Maybe. Like, maybe that was a option for me. I never think there's only one option. So it's kind of like, what college are you going to choose to go to? Well, you might have a option that you think is right, and then the doors close. So that doesn't mean you're wrong. This is kind of the human process of being led through life, is trusting that the right doors will close and other doors will open.
And that there's more than enough grace every day in every situation to make up for what we don't understand.
Yes. And when something doesn't work, that there always means there's other options for us.
Yeah. I've told this story before on the podcast, but I think it's worth highlighting. Going back to, there was a conversation with a guy named Donovan, who was a church leader, a very spiritual man. And it was in my early 20s. And I went to him very much seeking answers because I didn't trust myself to make any decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't trust my intuition. And
what job should I take? What schools should I go to? What people should I be around?
Yeah. And one of the questions that I often ask myself is, what does God want? And that was labeled as something that was holy, but it was actually something I was hiding in. Right?
Like, you didn't want to make decisions. So you're like, if God tells me, that's again the certainty. If God tells me to marry this person, then for sure it's going to be fine.
Yeah, it'll all work out.
Or if God tells me to take this job, then surely my boss won't be abusive.
Or even on top of that, if I follow God and it doesn't work out,
I can blame him.
There it is. I can blame him. I can blame it on someone else. I don't have to feel any of the repercussions of my own personalized shame that I might feel with it. So anyways, inside of that, I'm sitting down with Donovan being like, I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out what God wants. And, again, this was especially a time in my life where I had very strong culturally religious ideas of how one should express himself or not. And Donovan looks at me and he goes, well, Justin, just do something. And I was knocked on my butt by the language.
Yeah.
And I was like, just do something. I mean, like, not only did he tell me to violate this idea that everything I do needs to, like, what shoes should I wear today, God? Or, just this idea that you have to make all these right decisions based on what God thinks, and then the way that he delivered it. But it was a wonderful shock to shake the entirety of my system. And it was like, started to expose these things inside of me that go, oh, I'm actually really scared. And I feel small and insignificant and incapable of making decisions.
Yeah.
And I started realizing I'm really not connected to myself inside of this. Yep. And, it was a very liberating moment.
Yeah. I think the only way we can be connected to ourselves is to take the pressure of perfection off.
Yes.
Like if I feel like I should know what decision to make in every moment, there's no way we should know that. There's no way that we can future tell. There's no way we can tell if this job will lead to something that we love. Sure. There's no way we can tell if the house we buy is going to end up having a huge problem down the road and it's going to cost a lot of money. I mean, like you can do due diligence, but there's things that we can't know. And so if we can accept those truths about the world, like there's going to be things that I can't see and there's going to be things that are hard. And if you have beliefs like, but it's going to work out for me.
Yeah.
That belief can cover a multitude of hard situations.
Yeah. It's interesting because you find this throughout all aspects of different cultures, whether it's people going to tarot card readers, palm readers, psychics.
Absolutely. Wanting a prophetic word.
It doesn't matter. Like
having your parents make the decisions for you.
Right. Like
arranged marriages.
But I mean, even the idea that I want insight into my future, I want to know so I can be certain that I'm going to be okay, which is such a thing where it's like, oh,
we want to be certain that we're going to be okay. Ironically, we can be certain of that.
Yeah.
Without having to pick the perfect circumstances.
And I think that, well, people are like, yeah, but you don't know, I wasn't okay. These bad things happen. But did that mean you really weren't okay? Did you actually exacerbate the problem even worse by the way that you perceived it, how it was happening, by the meanings that you assigned to it? Like, oh, this means I'm bad. This means I'm a failure.
Right.
Did you exacerbate the difficulties? I'm not saying that there aren't difficulties that happen that aren't really destructive, but like there is something about the idea that like there is an immense amount of grace, mercy, restoration, reconciliation, redemption that is available for every mistake that happens.
Absolutely. I was thinking about one of my friends. They were so unsure if they should get vaccines or not when they had their child. They had so much fear about making the wrong choice and felt like, super high stakes if I do the wrong thing. And they were getting pressured to make a decision right away and they just didn't know. And they were trying to listen to their intuition. And they ended up just being like, I don't feel anything, so I'm just going to go with what the doctors are saying to do. So they got the immunizations. And then that actually, they had autism in their genes, but weren't aware of that. And the IV, what are they called? The shots, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Immunizations actually.
The vaccinations.
Woke up the autistic genes and their child became autistic. And so for years, there was a wrestle around, did I not listen to my intuition? Was my intuition there? Could I have saved myself from all of this pain? And this dance of regret.
That's such the wrong questions to be asking, right?
Well, there's not a way to answer them.
Yeah, that's why.
And the only way to answer them would be self-hatred. And how could you ever then make because what we'd want to do is be like, I should have known better. And then that puts so much high stakes on every decision in the future. And they had to actually walk through forgiving themselves. But that's, again, the idea that we should be able to know enough to always make decisions that don't cause us pain. And it's also not the eternal mindset because even though I don't think that is like God's design for humanity to suffer with any kind of illness.
Yeah.
I do know that everything can be redeemed. And I know that it's been a beautiful process of stretching and expanding and growing and healing.
Yep.
And so who's to know what the right decision was?
All it comes down to is that beauty can be extracted out of every situation.
And redemption can come into every situation.
If we're willing to invite it into it and engage it. Yeah, big time.
But intuition, we've talked a lot about like not relying on it too much, but we should talk about why it's valuable.
Well, one of the things that I did want to talk about is how we repair trust with ourselves.
Oh, okay.
Because I think that there's a couple.
Can we first share why intuition is valuable? Because it can help you with certain things. One thought I had is the story of you at the church that you were a part of in LA and your intuition about the small group.
Such a dark story to share.
Well,
but it is what true.
We're trying to say, like,
it is very powerful.
It's valuable to listen to intuition because there are things that intuition can help us navigate. Yeah,
there was a church in Hollywood that I started attending part-time. And because they served the homeless, and I had such a heart for the homeless, I spent a lot of time on Skid Row and in different areas of LA where just the messiest of humanity was. And I love that. I was like, all right, this space is doing the thing that I really feel like God celebrates. Yeah. Which is meeting people in the darkest of places. And so I'd go there often, and there was a men's Bible study that I kept getting invited to. And there was a lot of very handsome men being invited to this Bible study, which I'm just saying, I was quite the looker. Invited. I was quite the looker back in the day.
Still are. I'd invite you to that Bible study today, right now.
But something in my gut was like, this feels off. This is weird. Why do I feel a weird, strange pressure and stuff like that? And I've shared this on the podcast before, but I end up coming to find out that there was sexual abuse taking place from the head pastor in the small group. And there was grooming and strong sexual abuse that was being facilitated.
With a bunch of men.
With a bunch of men. Yeah. And men who they wouldn't necessarily have leaned to that style of behavior whatsoever. Yeah. And so there was an intense amount of spiritual abuse and manipulation that was taking place inside of it. And this person was very predatorial in what he created around him and stuff like that. But that was a thing where it was like, wow, like every time, they were very like, why don't you come join us? I don't understand why you don't want to come join us. It's great. You're going to get really connected. But there's something inside of me. Every time I was like, this doesn't feel good. Like, I don't know what this is. I could feel that thing in my gut just squeeze. Yeah. And I was just like, I didn't even have to like make up a decision what it was. I was just like, it doesn't feel good, so I'm not going to do it. And if I miss out on something that's really cool, I miss out on something that's really cool. I think a lot of people also hit FOMO and social pressure, right? Yes. Like that's a thing of social pressure. Like, everyone else is doing this, I should do it. And that's something that I've always gone against the grain of social pressure, especially when I see social pressure for something. I usually go the other way because I'm always like, if the sheep are all going that direction, they're probably being led to slaughter. Like, run the other way. Right. Which is my mindset. But it saved me. Yeah. It saved me from tremendous pain in that situation. Yeah. And if you hadn't listened to your intuition, there would be redemption through the healing process. Yep. That isn't. And I wouldn't have to be permanently broken by that circumstance. In fact, I had another circumstance that I felt like the intuition was correct to follow it. And it led led you into a manipulative situation similar. That had a similar a kind of abuse that was different in its ways, but it also led to beautiful things. Yeah. And beautiful redemptive things on the other side of it. And so again, it's like, I don't know what to say. I'm not going to cast judgment on it. I just know that there was beauty available to me. I don't want people to live in fear. If I make the wrong choice, something huge, high stakes is going to happen. But I do want people to have the confidence to know I can feel a gut feeling. It doesn't have to match with other people, and I'm allowed to follow it. Yep. I remember when I want to add this to it. Just because you have a strong intuition that you shouldn't do something, like you're like, I feel that I should run away from that situation, it doesn't even mean something nefarious is going on.
No.
It just might be like, your gut is telling you this isn't for you, period. You don't have to assign, because I think that we assign meaning to what this is. I'm like, I don't know what this is. I just know for me, this isn't right. And that's more than enough.
Yeah.
Or this is right for me in this season. And I'm going to walk this out.
Well, I remember, because I think positive gut following is important too, which is, I had just gotten offered a job. My life was the best it had been when I was younger. But I just felt this intuition, like this isn't what I'm supposed to do in this season. I'm supposed to go on an adventure instead. And I think, and I followed that. I decided to, and everybody thought I was crazy and having a breakdown, but I followed it. And it led me to ending up where I moved to LA. I moved in with my family. And it was one of my favorite seasons in life and radically transformed my view of God. Probably the fundamental
you end up living with your Uncle John that you recently talked about and the power of him in your life.
And it was like beautiful living with him, but also how I saw God so opened up and transformed my life. It set me on a completely different life path that season. And I believe that had I not chose to follow my gut, that there would have been other invitations. Because I think that I always think of life like the adjustment bureau. Like if you don't follow this path, there's like 5 more paths that can get you somewhere. So I don't feel high stakes, but I do feel like following that intuition brought a lot of goodness. But you have to have the courage to do something that maybe doesn't make sense to everybody else, that maybe isn't a big thing. And sometimes intuition is just like, I'm exhausted. I'm not going to go hang out with all my friends tonight because I need alone time. And it's not like, oh, if I go out to hang out with my friends, there's spiritual paranoia or intuition paranoia that is like, if I have intuition, it means something bad is going to happen.
Yes.
And that is not how I live my life. The amount of fear and hypervigilance that goes, and OCD looping that goes into that creates chaos for me. And I used to live that way.
Yeah.
But what I would be now is like, oh, my intuition is that I should stay in, probably because I need to be connected with myself. A lot of times, my intuition is my own heart screaming that it needs something.
Yeah.
Please take care of me. I need some space. I need to process,
Yeah, that's good. Well, for those who have broken the connection with their intuition, I think one of the things that's pretty necessary is that we look at the places where like, okay, trust isn't here right now. In order to repair trust, I need to start with some forgiveness because I think that's super vital to go like, okay, I forgive myself. Like I did make these messes in following what felt like my intuition, or these things didn't pan out. And I'm going to forgive myself that I made it. And I'm going to forgive myself for the pain that I experienced inside of that. And
it doesn't even mean that it was all your fault, but often we put ourselves on the hook for it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like my friend with the vaccine, they've had to forgive themselves, even though they actually were doing their best and they made a decision with the information that they had and they made the best that they could. So I'm not sure that it was bad and that they need to be forgiven for it.
Yeah.
But they need to forgive all of the things they've taken out on themselves, all of the pain and the regret and the blame, because we blame ourselves when pain happens. We either want to blame ourselves or we want to blame the people across from us instead of just saying pain happened.
Yeah.
And so we have to release ourselves and forgive ourselves from where we have blamed ourselves so that we can we can only have authentic connection with ourselves. We can only have our intuition if we are not divided against us.
Yeah.
So we need to actually be on the same team.
And part of that is grace. Like I'm going to extend grace to myself and be like, it's okay. Like you can make messes.
Yeah.
You can have to clean up messes. It's okay to clean up messes. That's not bad. It's being gracious in our thoughts and our process. And I think with that, there's that, our friend Bryant always talks about his friendship with failure and embracing failure as a friend inside of the intuitive process.
He wrote a book called Hello, My Name is Failure.
Oh yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Nice little pitch for him.
Yep.
No, it's just failure has to be part of our process, and we need to begin to see failure as a stepping stone to becoming, growing, It's this relationship that is here to teach you something and help you to learn and become who you're made to be. So like when I follow my intuitive self and things end up turning out messy, I'm like, oh, what a gift. Like there's something to extract out of this here and learn out of this. Mm-hmm. This is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are other ways to rebuild? Did you have anything else about rebuilding trust?
No.
Okay, great. I was thinking about one of the things I've learned the older I've gotten is how much my triggers interfere with my intuition.
Uh-huh.
So my intuition might be like, that person isn't safe, but that actually might be because they just remind me of somebody that really triggered me. Or it could be that they really aren't safe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it could be either one. But what I've learned is that my triggers can speak as loud as my intuition can.
That's good.
And I've just accepted that. I've accepted that sometimes I'm going to listen to my intuition and it'll, like, I think in marriage, part of it was intuition and part of it was triggers that led me to you. Mm. And I think both of those are great. And they've enabled us to grow and expand in ways that I think were a part of my life journey to learn here on earth. And so I feel really grateful for it. But I would say that 50% of why I chose you was my own triggers. Mm-hmm. I'd say same back with you.
Yeah.
And 50% of why I chose you was intuition. And I think there's a lot of decisions I can look back on and be like, I thought that was my intuition, but I'm pretty sure that that was just my deep down triggers.
Yeah.
Either of wanting to avoid things or of being drawn to things that kept me in the cycle of chaos. I can't tell you how many friends I have that'll be like, yeah, I just feel this thing inside that we're supposed to move again. And it'll be like the third time they've moved in like 2 years, you know? And I'll be like, out different cities or whatever. And I'll be like, or maybe your nervous system is so used to chaos that you're scared to plant and actually do roots somewhere. Like maybe this isn't your intuition. Maybe this is part of your triggers. But I feel like I'm comfortable knowing it could be a mixture.
Right. And I think I'm comfortable with the idea of having to look honestly at that and go, what is actually my intuition? What is my triggers? Because for some of us, they've put everything in the category of this is intuition. And it's okay to actually stop and be like, maybe I need to go through a season of figuring out what's the difference between intuition and what is trigger stuff. And how do I actually separate the two and grow from that? That's great for people to do.
Oh, yeah.
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 What's funny is as we're talking, I have this intuition
to go to the bathroom. I'm just kidding.
No, but I was like, I'm going to say this out loud because I'm going to kick myself in the butt if I get all the way through this and I don't say, Brian, that camera over there never has the light coming on it to say that it's on me. It says it's recording currently.
You're trying to follow your intuition.
Yeah, I'm like, my anxiety is rising as I'm talking. And I'm like, what if this whole intuition podcast...
And you don't follow your intuition? That would be hysterical. And there's a lot of times that things like that happen. Okay, talk about the intuition you had about our pipes the other day.
Oh, yeah, this is such a simple, fun little thing.
Yeah.
I literally was walking by... downstairs by our pool, and I went past like the storage area, and I heard this internal thought, and it said, go check under the house. And I was like, I guess I'm going to go check under the house. I could.
Now, okay. One of the reasons is because you don't gaslight yourself about intuition. You don't say that's stupid. That probably means nothing. You used to. And now you're like, well, it won't cost anything to go check under the house.
I might as well be like, just a second ago, it didn't cost me anything
to just ask.
To be like, hey, Brian, let me interrupt this moment and ask this question and whatever. And it could have saved us. It didn't cost us anything. And it's a fun moment in the podcast.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't shut myself down in that. So anyways,
and even when you hear that voice of like, I should go check downstairs, you don't then make a tally of, well, how many times have I felt this voice before? And when was it right? And when was it wrong? You're literally just like, I'll just go check.
Yep. Curiosity. Mm-hmm. So I jump in, get curious. I'm looking around under the house because we live on a hill. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden I look over, I hear like, and I look over and I see water dripping out of a sewage pipe, which is all the nastiness of sewage. and it's coming out of what they call the clean out. So the water is pushing itself up and out of this clean out, which to me, I'm like, the pressure that has to be on this pipe has to be enormous for it to be doing what it's doing. And I start knocking on the pipe, punk, punk.
And it's stuck.
Solid.
Ugh.
And I start going 50 feet back. The entirety of this thing
is locked up.
Yeah. And what I'm really at is I'm at a crossroads of something's going to give. And probably within the next week,
we would have had a sewage burst.
We would have had a sewage burst, and it would have made the biggest mess, probably around my nerd cave.
Totally.
I destroyed so much.
Yeah. Oh, right? Your intuition saved your nerd cave. Nerd cave.
My nerve cave.
Your nerve cave.
Yeah, it did, But again, it didn't cost me anything. And there's a lot of times that we are having intuitive moments that it doesn't cost us anything to ask to get curious, ask a few simple questions, investigate.
Yeah, especially the little, like there's that little intuition. There's so many times where it'll be like, pull over and go in that store and buy flowers for your friend today. Or like a thought could just pop into your mind like that. Or like, I should call this person and see how they're doing. We actually are all having like intuition happen regularly to us. And one of the reasons you trust your intuition is because when you get those little nudges, those little promptings, and we can actually learn to turn the dial up to hear those better, or we can turn the dial down to not listen to them.
Yeah.
And so what you've done is whenever you have a little nudge, you listen to it. And then so many times it'll be right. You'll be like, I just woke up and I feel like I'm supposed to call this person. Then you'll call them and you'll be like, man, I was just crying. I was asking God to have somebody reach out to me. And so what happens is it confirms your intuition.
Yeah.
And then you start to build trust in that voice. You start to notice this voice actually can lead me well.
Yep. I built momentum in all the little small things, and I forgave myself for the messiness of the big things that had fallout inside of it. Right.
Yeah. There's so many times that I feel like even what we shared with my uncle, like staying one extra day and having this amazing experience. Or there's times where I'll feel like, oh, just be extra nice to this cashier. And then I'll get into a good conversation with them. And it's just those little intuitions.
And again, those little intuitions, let me say this, like it didn't cost me. There's so many little intuitions that cost you very little to explore them. Because if I got under that house and I looked around and didn't see anything, I might go, okay.
Yeah. Don't know what that was.
Yeah. Not the end of the world. Going to move on. And if I call a friend and say, hey, I'm just calling to check on you because I was having some emotions about this. I felt this little nudge. And they're like, no, I feel great inside of my life. Cool. Glad. Hope you feel good about the fact that you're on my mind.
Totally. Yeah, it's very low stakes.
Yeah, very much so. So to me, I'm like, doesn't cost you anything.
So if you're listening to this podcast, this is a great reminder for you to notice those small nudges, to notice the things going on inside of you and to not gaslight yourself. Gaslighting yourself is like, that's probably so stupid. There's no reason for me to think that. There's no reason for me to do that. What Justin's saying is exactly right. There's no harm in trying. There's no harm in trying to call somebody. Now, there are things, I'll say this, I grew up with religious OCD, and that's a very real thing, which is like, oh, there's something you need to do, and if you're not exactly obedient to it, some catastrophic thing is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I feel like I'm supposed to wear a green shirt, but then my green shirt wasn't clean, so I wore a red shirt, and now I feel like I'm probably going to get shot when I go in the mall because I'm wearing the wrong color shirt. Like that kind of thinking, I actually had that kind of thinking.
That's so intense.
And
debilitating.
Yeah, we're not talking about the thing where you loop over and over again and feel like, we're just talking about like, oh, I felt this small nudge. I'm just gonna try following it.
And I make a million decisions a day that have no nudges connected to them whatsoever. I just made an effing decision.
Yeah, and half the time that gets us exactly where we need to go.
Yep, absolutely.
And other times the intuition is really helpful. One thing I think is important with intuition is to not gaslight yourself and to not fully assume. So I might be around somebody and I might feel that feeling of like something does not feel right here. And I might be like, this doesn't feel like a safe person to be around all the time, or this doesn't feel like a safe person to be one-on-one. There's a lot, especially for women, you got to listen to your intuition. But I've learned to listen to my intuition without defining what that means.
Yeah.
So I might be like, something about being around them, I feel so guarded. Like there's some men that I feel like locked up in my body and I just never want to be alone with them.
Yeah.
And I haven't decided what that means about them, but I have decided to honor myself.
Yeah.
And set good boundaries.
Yeah.
When I need to.
It's good.
And if it was somebody I was close to, I'd probably have conversations to understand and talk through. But for the most part, oftentimes those big reactions are with new people or people on the peripheral.
Yeah. When you're talking about that, there's three key emotions that stand out to me that end up bullying us into not
listening
following.
to it. Okay.
Yeah. And to me, that's fear, judgment, and shame. And fear can come in many different aspects. It can be fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, fear of looking foolish, fear of disconnect, which is another form of rejection. But there's fear, shame, and judgment are somewhere within that. And part of being able to go on the journey of following your intuition is you have to be willing to face those things. You have to be willing to acknowledge, hey, there's fear, shame, and judgment that's in my way in some way, shape, or form that's keeping me from acting on this. And it makes sense because we want to belong inside of we want to belong with people. We want to belong as part of groups. And there's obviously a lot of rules to belong as part of a group, unspoken rules that we all kind of adhere to. And we don't want to go against the grain of those rules and shake the boat oftentimes because we don't want the pain of the disconnect and stuff like that. But we're going to have to, in order to live a lifestyle that's connected to our intuition, we're going to have to accept the fallout of people disconnecting and the fallout of people misunderstanding and the fallout of people judging. And it just is. It will come with the territory. But we have to also accept that if I'm not following my intuition, those things will exist.
Still happen.
They're still going to happen. I'm still going to get rejected. I'm still going to get misunderstood and judged. It's inevitable. And so once you can understand that this is inevitably going to happen, and I might as well be connected to myself while it happens, it changes the game on everything as you accept that.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not hopeless to say that pain is inevitable. It's actually really powerful to say that I can learn how to process through pain really well. Yeah.
Yeah. And that again,
it's kind of like if you were a football player and for the NFL, like it's inevitable you're going to get injured.
Yes.
Like you're going to get injured. I don't know how bad
you're going to get traded, a lot of them, to another team at some point.
Yeah. You may not, but definitely you're going to
get a good chance that
you're probably going to get an injury throughout the thing.
Yeah.
So if you can accept, I might get injured, but I can get good doctors and I can do strength training. I can do things to try to help my body respond the best. And but like, that's just if we can accept these things in life, then we don't live in as much resistance. And resistance I always think of resistance as like walking upstream. It's so much work to walk upstream instead of just float down the river.
So, living with your intuition, again, it's going to cost you, friends at times. It's going to cost you connections because there will be those misunderstandings. There will be those disconnects that happen inside of it. It's going to cost you facing fear, right?
But it's also going to create such good connection within yourself.
Absolutely.
When you follow your intuition, you're being congruent with yourself. Following our intuition demands that we're connected to our authentic voice. And when we're connected to our authentic voice, we're often making the best decisions for ourselves. We're often connected to the things that lead us the best. We're often we feel more loved when we are connected to ourselves.
Yeah.
So it benefits us so much to pay attention. When I listen to an intuition, it's like me honoring my own voice and saying, yeah, you're worth following. I'll try this.
Yeah. And, on that note, one of the things I think of is that it's going to cost you having to clean up mistakes and messes. But again, that goes back to the idea that like, I'm going to make mistakes and messes, even if I don't listen to my intuition.
Totally.
And if I do listen to my intuition, I'm going to make mistakes and messes.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to have to live a lifestyle of cleaning up some way, shape, or form. And that's something that you just have to embrace. Like there's just a lifestyle of cleanup.
It's a lie that if you follow your intuition perfectly your whole life, you can avoid messes.
Yep.
It's just not true. Even if it's other people making messes.
Yeah.
Like one of the greatest seasons of trauma to me happened from messes that people around me made, not my own. And I didn't have the power to avoid that. And that season is the reason that I became trauma informed. And then I've been able to help so many people and understand the world better and let go of judgments towards myself and others and agree with love and get connected to compassion and understand my own story. And it opened up a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
So who's to say?
And you're talking,
was it the right or wrong thing?
You're talking about, the benefits of it. And I look at it and go, I've been on so many cool adventures.
Yeah.
Because of following intuition.
100%.
Like I got out of the numbness of life through my intuition. I've had moments that were just extraordinary in exchanges with people.
Yeah.
From little small moments with people that I felt led to talk to on the streets of LA and stuff like that, to really cool life impacting decisions that sent my life on a whole different trajectory, right? Because I did that. And I found myself also feeling such a sense of empowerment and confidence inside of my life, because I'm like, I feel like I'm choosing into my life versus like having it happen to me. Like when I engage my intuition, I'm taking these wild risks and this confidence gets built. Yeah. And all of a sudden I find myself being like, oh, this is really cool. Like I own this life.
Yeah.
I own it.
Yeah.
It doesn't own me.
Yes.
And that feels really cool to me.
That feels really, really good.
And ultimately, at the end of the day, I have truly found such a greater sense of joy and happiness in my life following my intuition, because in order to follow my intuition, I've had to be connected to my heart. And connecting to my heart brings up a sense of feeling alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel inspired. I was thinking about this time in my childhood when I needed a car. Well, not childhood, I guess I was teens, but I needed a car. And I'd saved up a bunch of money and I didn't know where to buy a car. I'd never bought a car before. I felt overwhelmed. And I just had this intuition to call my barber. I had a barber back then, way back in the day. And I was like, I'm just going to ask them if they know anybody selling a car. And I did it. And she was like, nope. And I was like, okay. And that was it. That's all that happened. And I thought I followed my intuition and I felt proud about that. Like I did what was coming across my mind, Yeah. And I
feel like there's more to this story.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, a month later, somebody who had heard, like she had mentioned that to somebody and they ended up giving me a car for free. Yeah. They heard it from the barber. And then they gave me a car. Well, I paid $100 for it. And so then all the money I'd saved went towards these other opportunities that I was able to do. But it was like, I just trusted the one step that I had.
This is a step I knew I took it.
And so I did that. And then I was keep taking steps to look for other cars.
Yeah.
Like I kept doing things, but I have so many stories like that where intuition defied what I think could logically happen.
And what was super cool was even in that, there was a timing thing. So you followed a yes. And in the moment, it didn't feel like it panned out. But there was actually timing to it.
And we have so many situations like that where we met somebody and we felt a connection. And then years later is when that connection actually created deep meaning.
It's interesting. This one story keeps coming to my mind. And we're kind of past that part of the telling of the tales of this, but it just keeps coming to my mind that I remember a guy came to me and was like, hey, I need an editor for this. This is in our first year of marriage. It was in the second 6 months and we were really low on funds and needed money.
Yeah.
And this guy's like, look, I have some work. I think it was about a month worth of work or something like that, or a week. Was it? No, a week worth of work. intense work and I was going to get paid like $30,000 or something to edit this video.
Okay.
Do you remember this?
No.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It was, and I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to take it. I got on the phone with my dad. My dad's like, you really need to take this. You guys don't have money. Why wouldn't you take this? I'm like, no, I just feel like we're supposed to do what we're doing and stay on the course. And he's like, look, it's just an intense week worth of work and you're going to have a big payout.
Right.
And I turn it down. And a year later, okay, and it was a gig for a feature documentary, editing it. A year later, this person still hadn't been paid and they realized they weren't going to get paid, who did take it because financing fell through. And so I wouldn't have gotten paid anyways for it. But it was cool because it was like, there was like this good opportunity at my doorstep. And I said no to it. And there may be good opportunities that come to our doorsteps. It happens
to me so much.
And we've had tons of them where
I've had to turn down so many good opportunities because my gut said no.
No, not right now.
And I was like, I will follow my authentic yes.
And it may seem like it costs you a lot and it may cost you a lot.
And here's the thing. Had you taken the job and not gotten paid, you know what we would have done? We would have been like, that's a learning experience.
Yes.
And this is meant to throw our lives forward and this will be redeemed. And when you didn't do it, we're like, that's a learning experience and that will help us move forward and it will be redeemed, you know?
Yeah.
It's both things.
It's really how you approach it. So, well, with that said.
Oh, you know what? We're about to run Living Fully Live. And it's like I didn't realize it until we got into this conversation, but it's everything to help you reconnect to your intuition because it's about learning how to connect to your heart, learning your operation system, learning how to have compassion on yourself. You know, like we're talking about having grace for when you miss it. Some people have never learned how to humanize the person in the mirror. We talk about repair with yourself, learning to forgive yourself, learning to be kind to yourself, learning how to restore the connection within you, finding your authentic voice, taking back your life, and healing. It's the process of healing and transformation. It starts in March. We run it once a year, every year. This is our most famous course.
Yeah.
And some of you have been listening to this podcast for like 5 years and you've heard all of these things because you've listened the whole time. And this is the year to do it. And this is me nudging your intuition. Some of you actually know you have an intuition that this is your season to get more healing, that it's your season to connect to yourself more, that you've been listening and you're like, there is a nudge that I feel to engage myself, take my power back more in my life. And if you're feeling that nudge, join us.
Yeah. It'd be amazing. And join our immersion program because that's like where the community
transformation happens.
Really happens because there's a community experience that takes place with like, live healing.
Yeah, it's like community therapy. It's like group connection. It's beautiful and it intensifies your healing process. So, I mean, not intensifies, but like multiplies it.
Yeah. Expedites it. So you can go check that out at justinabby.com. And
here's a little nugget from somebody who did it.
Yeah. And remember, rate, review, subscribe, and share. Now that we're on YouTube, share the heck out of these videos.
Oh, yeah. The YouTube.
The old YouTube.
And subscribe on YouTube. So
subscribe
that you
on
can get
YouTube.
updated when we put new videos
Hit the subscribe button. Right. I don't know where that's at. It's down there.
The main thing that I can point to is how much disappointment that I lived in regarding my expectations of everybody around me to perform at a certain level or do things a certain way that I perceived as right and wrong that I've been set free from. I can't even explain like the level of peace that I'm living in compared to how much disappointment I was living in all areas of my life, even though I had language for living in the gray and had high value for living in the gray, but still had a lot of boxes in my life that I've been able to analyze and try to figure out where did that come from and why did I hold on to it? Why did that make me feel safe? So that's the main thing that I'm very thankful for.
That's so huge for you to even be able to recognize, oh, these are protectors. These are things that I'm doing to try to feel safe. That is so beautiful.
All right.
Bye.
Bye now.